Please, folks, give me a warm virtual welcome. Put your emojis together for Mr. Chris Walker. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Bolji. Hey, everyone. Awesome to be here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Chris Walker. I own and run a company called Refine Labs. We help B2B companies transform their demand generation programs. And what I want to talk about today is I'm going to talk definitely about community, but I want to help people understand how we've gone. If you looked at our business 2 years ago, there was one employee. It was me. And over the past 2 years, by doing the things that I'm going to talk about, we've grown to 50 people with no funding. From 1 to 50 people in 2 years, continue to grow rapidly. And we've, as it's mentioned in the title, have built a moat, have built a competitive advantage where we get compounding results and gains through basically exponential growth moving forward as we continue to do it. And so looking forward to sharing that with all of you. I come from a marketing lens. Most of the things that people see from me is from marketing, but when it really comes down to it, I'm a business person. I just realized that marketing is the way that you can get a lot of things done today. But I come from a business perspective and very practical. And so when I think about using a community or building one of those out, I think about it as pure offense. Like there is a major opportunity out there. Our buyers are on the internet. They're looking for places to hang out. They're looking for awesome information. We know what places they go to. Why don't we as the business be the people that are out there putting out that information? Why don't we put out the information that people love to be? Why don't we create that news site? Why don't we create that place where people can hang out? That's what I'm thinking about. And so I want to talk through the story about how we did this. I did this to build my company, but in 2017 I did this to build a marketing in a B2B venture funded company. And so you can do this in both different places. At that point, I was going after emergency medicine physicians and respiratory therapists. And this time I was going after marketers. So a lot of times people are like, oh, it's easy to build a community around marketing. You're a marketer. But I just want to make it clear to everyone that I've done this with people that are very technical buyers that are not marketing too. And so when I was getting started and putting together my company, it was just me. I think the first thing that we really figured out was strategy and story. And so I think I'm going to talk through the entire process of how we got it. Strategy and story first. Who are we segmenting? Who are the important people that we're talking to? How do we define that audience? And what is the story? Why should people pay attention? Why should people want to be a part of this movement? Why should people want to come and hang out in our places? I think you need to give people a good reason where they want to be somewhere because they're growing professionally, because they're having opportunities to have different career opportunities, that they're learning, that they're networking. All of those reasons are good ones for why people would want to be a part of a community. So we had the story, right? Which the story for us, just so everyone is clear, is that the way to do B2B marketing has completely changed and companies can't keep up with it. And so that's the story. And then basically we communicate all of those things. And then we see that people come back because they see it too in their business. They see, hey, we're doing marketing the way that all the tech vendors are telling us to do, and it's not working very well. We think that it's broken too. And then you start to get people into a movement. And so the first way in for us at that point was posting content on LinkedIn. That was where the initial audience was built. When you were looking for a place to build an initial audience, I recommend looking at an organic content social platform that has high organic reach. At the time, and still LinkedIn is a very good option in B2B. And so finding that organic social platform, we were able to build initial audience. And then after that, it's continuing to build. So this is the conversion from audience to community. And I actually see them just blending the same way. I don't see them very much differently, because for me, when I'm on LinkedIn, like I think it's a community. I post stuff, 100 people comment on those things. I get insights back. I help them. It's a community. It's just happening inside of a social network. And so LinkedIn had been going pretty well. And then the pandemic happened. And we made a pivot to move into a weekly live event that got transitioned into a podcast, which is the true community. So we have basically 3 legs on this strategy. We have LinkedIn organic content distribution. We have a live event that 50 to 100 marketers show up every week to. And then we have a podcast that we publish 3 episodes a week. So if you want to come live, that's awesome. That's awesome. We'll see you there. If you want to listen to a long form episode that's 90 minutes long that has deep insights on marketing, you can go to the podcast. If you want bite-sized snippets, you can go to LinkedIn. But it's a community in multiple different channels. I think when some people look at community, they think that they need to be the one that starts the Facebook group, that it needs to be their company's Facebook group or their company's Slack community or those types of things. I don't think that you necessarily, I mean, a lot of companies can do that, and certainly that would be a viable option for a lot of companies, but you don't need to. And so what we do is we have different content and social platforms that we put content into, and then I spend time being a peer in a lot of other communities. And so in those communities, it might be Dave Gerhardt's Facebook group, it might be Pavilion or Revenue Collective, it might be Peak Community where marketers hang out, where I'm just in there being a peer. I'm there to learn. I'm there to get consumer insights. I'm there to see what people are talking about. And so I think, and I'm going to kind of just hammer this home, I truly believe that the missing piece for most people that are trying to do something like what we've been able to do is deep customer insights. I find that most companies just don't spend enough time to really, really figure out who their customer is, why, who their audience should be, why, what they really care about, where they spend their time, how they get their information, what are they thinking about, how is that changing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And so being able to get those insights and then be really agile and respond to how people are doing things, right? And so when we do our live event, the agenda gets set 24 hours beforehand. I don't have some type of plan that's going out like we're going to talk about these topics in 6 months. I respond to the questions that people ask. I respond to how people comment on LinkedIn posts. I respond to the things that I see CMOs saying in Revenue Collective before I get on the event. And so there's like this ever evolving community that's happening in a ton of different places, but the movement is consistent. And so it doesn't matter whether people are getting content in a specific channel, whether there's word of mouth, whether they're listening on a podcast. The message is clear and they're getting it in the way that they want to consume it. And so it's an interesting thing. Like community is a good way to look at it. I think about looking at it, and it might be more clear for people, is looking at it as a movement. Why do people want to get behind this? And so when we pivoted to live events and a podcast and have continued to iterate on that for a very long time, some of the successful ingredients of why we've been able to grow very quickly and have a ton of success, customer focus, I'll hit on that several times during this talk. The next one is consistency. So we do several events per week. We publish 3 episodes of a podcast every week, and I post on LinkedIn at least 5 times a week. That level of consistency, I don't see at any company. I don't care if you're $1 billion or more in revenue. I see very few companies with executives or subject matter experts that are putting out information at that frequency. The reason why is because it's not really a priority for them. Like when you really reverse engineer Refine Labs' business strategy, hire, develop, and retain the best talent of demand gen people and others in the entire industry. That's number 1. Number 2, deliver incredible business outcomes for our customers. Number 3, create the best content on the internet from B2B marketing. And it truly is like if you think about the priorities and the magnitude of those different things, create the best content on the internet for your subject matter for a company never hits the 3rd priority in the entire company from a CEO's perspective, and that's an issue. The content and the perspective create the movement, which build the community. And so you need to figure out a way to either help executives at your company really understand why this is so important, or there's another alternative, which is find a company that really already believes in it, and then you can just go. So those are a couple of opening thoughts. I am super passionate about this topic and would love to answer a couple questions on it.
I love it. I love it. The chat is on fire. I apologize for not warning you all if you hadn't
Yeah.
yet been on Chris Walker live session or listened to his podcast. He jumped straight in. All right. So So we're gonna
Yeah,
riff with
and no
him as
slides. I
well.
saw a couple of questions in there if they were supposed to be hearing or seeing slides. No slides on this one. I just chat.
It's just chat, and actually that's something that we could pick up on a little bit, Chris, because a lot of what you do sort of bucks conventional wisdom in B2B marketing. You're not planning your content calendar 6 to 12 months in advance. You're doing some things that on the face of it don't scale. You just talked about starting a community, and a lot of this was agile, by the way. You started a weekly Zoom, it turned into a podcast, then you started to syndicate the information on LinkedIn. 50 people live, 50 to 100 people doesn't sound like a large number to folks who are used to reporting to their executives how many thousands of leads or MQLs they brought in this week. Why are you so comfortable with potentially doing things that aren't scalable?
It does scale. People are just confused because when I'm looking at whether or not it's scaling, I'm looking at the amount of people that I'm impacting. I'm looking at the amount of revenue that our company is generating. I'm looking at the amount of talent that we're able to acquire. Other people look at the amount of attendees that come to an event, the amount of leads that they generate, vanity metrics that don't matter, and they like when they see big numbers. And so that's really the difference. It's centering around metrics that matter. A second thing that people should think about relative to the event and my perspective is that for me, an event is not about trying to get as many people to the event as possible. What I'm trying to do is have people that are there that really want to be there, that want to participate and help us create relevant content because they ask good questions, which allows us to create and distribute asynchronous content that tens of thousands of people consume. So I don't need to have 10,000 people at my live event. I don't even need to have 100 people at the live event because I know that most people would prefer to consume content asynchronously through a podcast or through LinkedIn content or other things like that. So the event for us is truly a consumer insights and content creation mechanism. Most people think about it as how many leads did I get out of this event, and I just think it's a really antiquated way to think about an event. Definitely, if you're trying to get a community going, thinking about the attendees that come to your event as leads, not a good mindset in building a community. When we think about how to really build one, what I want people to think about as marketers is that basically everything that you've been told as a marketer is out the window when you're trying to do these things. Everything that you learned growing up, all the principles, you're not going to have attribution. We need a new mindset. We need new measurement. We need just generally a different approach of what we're doing. And so when you think about why some of these programs never get off the ground or why they never have the right buy-in or whatever, it's usually because of that. It's because you're taking a direct response or lead focused or just basically like coming in it from a sales mindset and then trying to build a community. And the things that you do when you're trying to sell people are the exact opposite things of what people want when they're in a community.
Yeah, Chris, you're going to get a lot of people in trouble here because you are lighting fires and, and forcing people to think about this in a different way. There's a few different threads that you laid down that I want to sort of pull on. One of those is you just sort of mentioned sales, and you've talked about on your live sessions before about how a lot of what marketers are doing tends to actually be more on the sales side of the house from your perspective than on the marketing side of the house. How do you see the lanes differing between marketing and sales? And are those lines blurring or is there a clear distinction?
Yeah, so for me and the way that I look at this I think is unique. So take a second and really try and internalize what I'm trying to say because if you can figure this out, it'll completely change your career. It will literally do it. It doesn't matter what job title you have, it doesn't matter who you report into in the org chart. It doesn't matter about those things. What matters about whether you're doing marketing and sales is about your mindset, which drives your behavior and it drives how you measure and what metrics you optimize for. And so when people are doing sales, they're trying to convert someone, they're trying to get someone into a meeting, they're trying to sell something. Well, and so if you think about you as a marketer and how your time is allocated, if you have 100% of your time, I interact with hundreds of B2B marketers every week. Most B2B marketers do digital sales in channels that are considered marketing. And so from a sales side, it's all purely based on conversion, trying to get someone to buy something, trying to move someone from one stage of your funnel to another one. Anything like that mindset would drive that. On the marketing side, what I'm trying to do is distribute information that people love, that they go out and they do something better with it. Their lives get better, their career accelerates, their company grows faster, which creates affinity to my company, to my thoughts, to me, which allows them in the future to either consider me when they think that they have a problem that we can solve, or when 10 people ask them, "Do you know a company that can help me with this?" They're the first thing they say is to us, and they don't even work with us. And so what I don't think that people understand, I'm trying it's super clear to me, is that word of mouth among the people that are in whatever market you're going after drives the most B2B buying decisions. It's straight up. And the reason is because B2B buyers trust their peers more than anything else. The options of where they can get information are from their own peers through a Google search that has affiliate links and a bunch of other things and just general a lot of bad advice. Gartner, vendors. And so given all of those options about where they can get stuff, and there's been plenty of data that shows this, is that people dramatically trust their peers more than any of those other sources. And so when they're going to make a buying decision, or they're going to consider their business priorities, or they're going to consider which product to use between these four in the category, they're not going to go to Google. They're not looking at the Gartner Magic Quadrant. They're going into some level of a community, some level of word of mouth, and they're surveying their peers, or they're having a direct conversation with someone they trust about what they would do or what they have done or what their experience has been. And so when you start to recognize that, you see community in an entirely different way. I
Mm,
know that anyone's considering to use any company that's like mine is going to go to those places and talk to people about what they should do. And so I know that if I put out great information on the internet, which builds a bunch of credibility, which shows that a bunch of people in the market think that we're the leader, because we are, that then when their peers are considering to buy something and they go into these places like communities or Slack channels and they ask, "Hey, I'm trying to find someone to help us fix our inbound pipeline. I'm trying to find someone to help us fix our ABM programs that aren't working. Who should I use?" That the odds of people saying Refine Labs or my company go through the roof. And that's,
mm,
in my view, I think that's what community is all about. I think that's how you justify business outcomes of a community, is just purely based on more people knowing about you, knowing how that you're very credible and have a bunch of expertise, and that
mm,
you're top of mind when people have questions about who they should use for something. I think every B2B
mm.
buyer, if you think about it, it's got to be a high percentage. I don't know the number, and I'm not going to guess on this one, but it's got to be very high of people that before you ever talk to sales or before you ever go to a company's website, you ask somebody else that you trust about what their experience with a product has been.
No, that's true. That's true. Man, you dropped a couple of things there, Chris, that I'm going to push you on because I really want to
Let's
hear
do it.
people want to have people hear you lay out this argument. So your argument, what you're positing, Chris, is that traditionally, perhaps if we go back to the days of Mad Men, there's the famous quote, "I know half of my advertising is working, I just don't know which half." We came from that, where there was a lot of emphasis on the creative. There was a lot of emphasis on the story. But then we entered sort of this accelerated era of the web, of the internet. And now we have attribution, and now we have tools that work at scale. I can put a message out today to 1 million people. You are arguing that a lot of the companies that have sprung up to enable us marketers and us community builders to take advantage of all these wonderful tools, it seems you're arguing that pendulum has swung a bit too far, to the point where instead of us listening to Google and Gartner, we are finding ourselves in what Sixth Sense and others have started calling the dark funnel, the dark sales funnel, where a lot of
Mhm.
that experience, a lot of the research happens before we ever talk to a salesperson. So that's been interesting. But I actually heard you coin a term couple of days ago, and I'd love it if you could unpack what that term means. Dark social. How does that bridge
Mhm.
that gap from Google and Gartner to the dark funnel from a few years ago to now? You are saying we are now in an era of dark social.
Mhm. Yeah, so this is basically everything that I've talked about so far, and the reason that our company is growing at more than 100% per quarter, and the reason that certain brands that you love, this is the reason why. It's called dark social. It's called places like communities and content platforms and direct word of mouth and text messages and third-party events and all of these places. It's dark because you can't track any of it. The reason that you can't track any of it is because they're on platforms that have significant privacy policies that would never give data to your attribution software about who's watching your video or who's looking at that or who's clicking. It would be a complete violation of their privacy policies. So you don't have any of the data. And so because companies don't have any of the data because they look at attribution in such a rigid way, they don't have any of the data. So they're just like, I guess this stuff doesn't work. Let's just not execute there. And any B2B buyer themselves knows that that's where buying is happening. If you look at yourself about how you buy enterprise software, you do some type of research, you survey a ton of your peers, you look in certain places, you consume content in certain places, which then drives your business priorities. And so this is what I'm saying about dark social. The thing that I'm helping people try and distinguish is that my belief is that the social platforms are really where everything is happening, where decisions are made. And a lot of companies are just hanging out waiting for intent data. Intent data comes from review sites, it comes from Google, it comes from website traffic, it comes from it's bottom funnel stuff. And so you can do whichever you want as a company. You can wait and sit at the bottom of the funnel and try and hope that you can capture some buyers. But let me tell you, it is way better. It is way better to be in social, to be building a brand, to drive your message of your category, to build relationships, to create affinity, so that when people decide that they're going to buy something, it's already when they decide that it's already decided it's going to be from you. And then there's all these companies at the bottom of the funnel waiting for their intent data because some customer went to a review site to confirm how good your brand is, and they never win. And so it's
Mm,
funny. Marketing companies do that to us all the time. Our customers, our prospects tell us. And it's just like, yeah, I got right when I made this Google search or right when I went to this, I got 4 calls from agencies that I'm definitely never going to work with
wow.
because for 6 months I decided that when I need it, I'm going to work with you. And so those are some things that people need to think about is like where in the buying process do you want to get in? Do you want to get in when they've already decided what they're going to buy and who they're going to buy it for and it's not you? Or do you want to be way in the front? So I'm just trying to help companies think about it, but the problem is that when you start looking at I need to be out there in communities driving business priorities, the way that you act there and the way that you
Mm,
measure there needs to be completely different and companies can't do it because they're always in sales mode. So in order to have an effective community and effective movement, the things that we're talking about here, the number one key is completely separating from the outcome. I never come on an event wondering how many people are going to be there. I never come on to an event wondering how many leads I'm going to get. People like speak at conferences like this. They're like, "I'll send you the lead list." I'm like, "That's the last thing that I care about this event. I have no interest in getting your lead list." I never post anything on LinkedIn thinking about how many opportunities I'm going to create or how much pipeline I'm going to create, which allows me to be 100% customer centric. And I say that there's people in this audience that might be like, I don't believe you, but this guy's full of shit. I bet he definitely cares about how many leads he has, but I truly don't. And so I'm really hoping that some people, if you can flip your mindset on that, you become an incredible marketer, you become an incredible relationship builder, you become very curious about what your customers care about, which then drives really interesting strategy changes.
mm, mm. I gotta let that one breathe for a sec. I gotta let that one
I love
breathe, man. No, because listen, Chris, this is one that community builders as well as marketers are flat out struggling with. Everyone who's built community and is wired that way understands that it's not a short-term play. It's not a pay for play. It's not scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. It is, Gary Vaynerchuk has talked about give, 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 give. And then at some point down the road, ask for the get. You're even just talking about just come in completely separating from the outcome. So I want to
Mhm.
ask the question that a lot of our community builders are thinking right now. They're like, Chris, you had me at hello. I'm sold. Like this is how I've always wanted to do business. But my CEO or my board of director or my manager might not think the same way. How can a marketer
Mhm.
or a community builder deliver the results, the short-term results that their manager wants and needs, frankly, to run the business, while also nurturing this kernel of a community until it gets to the point that it can actually stand on its own?
Mhm. So I've done this before at companies with CEOs that don't believe in any of this stuff. So I can talk
Mm,
through that as well. But the thing that you want to go after if you're doing this and you plan on being in this company for a long time is not to create some different metric that helps people like believe in what you're doing. It's to fundamentally change their mindset about why you're doing it. Because then, if you fundamentally change their mindset, if you don't do that, every time you want to do something new, you're going to face resistance. You're going to have to justify what you're doing. You're going to have to do those things. If you can change their mindset and they truly believe in it, then you can just go. Next time you want to do something, they're like, "Oh, I get why you're doing that. Let's keep going." So, thinking about reverse engineering what these people care about, and then the way that I've always found to get this done, and the way it's the way to get this done is to use what customers say and then deliver that to the executive team. I'll give you plenty of ways that I've done this. There was one time when a CEO just didn't get why I was targeting this one segment because it had a smaller TAM, and they were like, "Well, we want to go after this one over here. There, it's way bigger. It was way bigger market opportunity." I knew that the way bigger market opportunity, none of those people wanted to buy stuff. So I took the
mm,
CEO over to this other segment over here that was smaller, where all of our customers were, and they were super happy. And I showed him what was going on. I asked them the same questions that I would ask this person. Why do you use our product? How much do you love it? And they're like, I need this. Our patients need this thing. And then you take them over to this other segment and they're like, we don't need your product. Our patients don't have that condition, whatever. So showing people in a qualitative scenario with customers in person or on a Zoom is a great way to do it. The next way that I've done is large scale survey. I'm not doing a survey to get the insights. The survey is true. I already have the insights. Customers have already told me these things qualitatively. I'm doing a large scale survey so I can bring that into the executive team and say, I heard this from 15 people in a row and I already knew it was true. But now here's data from 600 of our target decision makers that they learn about stuff on LinkedIn. They're learning about
mm.
more so than they do at this conference, more so than they do in this medical journal. So whatever you need to prove by using customer data to do that, to change the mindset of we're not like this is why we're investing in LinkedIn because 92% of our customers say that they use LinkedIn weekly. And that's what you need to justify. So that's one piece on changing the mindset. And then when you're going and you're thinking about the measurement components, this is purely qualitative because attribution will fail every time. Attribution, in my view, is very only focusing on the way that marketers use attribution today is incredibly short-sighted. There are plenty of ways to measure things outside of using a software tool. You can survey customers, you can ask them, you can call them. There's plenty of other ways to get the data. You can have some AI run across recorded gong calls. There's plenty of things to do. And so the thing that I've been doing is when people say someone sends me a message and says, that that video that you sent about how marketers are so handcuffed by attribution and can't innovate, I just sent that to my CEO. I just put that in my company's Slack channel about and trying to get people to understand these things. You take a screenshot of that. Or you got your sales team on sales calls and the first thing that people say that's happened to us in 2018, the first thing that people say every time they have a meeting with our sales rep is, I can't stop seeing your content on Facebook and I love it. It's a great way to start a great way to start a sales meeting if you ask me. And so, the qualitative insights from people commenting on your post, from people sending you messages, from people saying things to your sales team. The insights about why this stuff works are everywhere. So as a marketer, even if you're not doing this stuff, if you actually measured and asked customers, you'd see that probably 40-50% of your revenue gets driven by word of mouth.
Mm.
But no company measures it. So they think it's coming from organic search. They think it's coming from outbound. And so those are some things to think about on the measurement side. But in my view, try and change the mindset using customer data, and then use qualitative insights about what people are saying and how it's impacting their buying process as a leading metric. You could eventually manually attribute it to revenue too. It would be super easy.
Mm, mm. That's crazy because, a lot of us have always taken, those of us marketers who believe we know performance marketing has its place. We can get the leads, we can get the response. It's direct response marketing, but we've always believed more in the brand marketing, building relationships. But it's always felt like more of playing defense. It's always felt like, yes, you can do this, but you're always going to have to justify. You are sort of turning that on its head, and you're saying building community can actually be pure offense. You're saying that by obsessing about customer insights, knowing their pains, their wants, their fears, their anxieties almost better than they do, but then using their own voice, the customer voice, and just reflecting that to upper management, you have a better shot of influencing and changing the mindset of those in your organization.
Mm-hmm. Was there a
Love
question
that.
in there? I didn't catch it.
I,
Yeah, I
I,
love
I just
that.
I just wanted to
Give me
make sure I was
one
I
more
was
and
on the
see.
same page with you, and that really
Yeah,
struck
thank
me
you.
as something that I haven't heard before. I love it. So Chris, we've got about a minute left as we wrap up. I kind of want to ask what you see as coming on the horizon. You've sort of had a knack for looking around the corner, seeing what's next, and being more agile. So, what are some things that community builders and marketers should be looking out for?
I get this question all of the time, and I give the same answer. I give the same answer every time. Is that most people are looking for the next thing when there's 10 things in front of them right now that could work that they're not doing. So it's like, stop looking in the future about what's coming next, because there's things right ahead. I just mentioned them: LinkedIn, Slack communities, Facebook groups, a podcast, hosting an event every week. I know that 98% of companies don't do all of those things at once, and they're all right in front of you, and they definitely drive business results better than most other things companies do. So I'd encourage you to assess. Some people might think that those are the next things, but it's really current. And so in the current, if you're thinking about things that you could do, I think that LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram ads are a massive opportunity if you go into it with the right mindset. I think that LinkedIn organic is a great channel. I think that putting on a podcast frequently is a really good one. I think that doing events all the time, like this, or in a smaller setting like a meetup or however, like those are the things that I think marketers should think about. And then when we get into the innovation component, like what's next, it's super interesting, because what happens is that when you're doing the things that are current, you see the things that are coming next, because you're with your
Mm.
customers, you see where they're moving to, you hear what they're saying, you get those insights that most marketers don't have right now. So they're looking for our advice on what's next, and I'm just waiting for people to tell me what's happening. And so I think it's a different way to think about it.
I love it. I love it. Chris Walker, folks.
Thank you, everyone. It's
Thank
been
you
a
so
blast.
much, Chris. Thank you so much, Chris and Balaji. That was fantastic. You're right, Balaji. The chat was going off. People have some really good questions as well. So perhaps they could take to social media and ask you some questions on social media, Chris.
Would love that. Yeah, tweet at me or LinkedIn, either way.
Perfect. Thank you again. And let's flood the chat with some millions of emojis. Thank you. Thank you.